Hi, everybody, and welcome to day 2 of our 3-part skills lab. I hope that you're having an excellent time at BB Dev Days. Just a little bit of housekeeping. For this webinar and for all of the sessions here, the webinar is being broadcast through your computer speaker. So if you do experience any technical difficulties, just refresh your browser, and that seems to rectify most issues. If for some reason you have bad audio quality, do not despair. Everything is being recorded here, and we will post the recordings. They'll be available afterwards by Friday, I believe, is our commitment to you. We do have guides available, and you will want to make sure to click on the Docs tab in the right side of your screen and download the guide for today's session. We do have an active chat as well as a Q&A. So would highly encourage you to use chat for group conversations and messages, giving your session host and your speaker today lots of love. But if you do have a specific question, if you please could use that Q&A. That way we can triage and make sure that we try to get to all of those questions that we can. For those of you I met yesterday in the session, Heather McLean, I'm a principal product manager here and a huge cheerleader of all things using our Power Platform. And I'm joined on the stage today by Ashley Moose. She is one of our OG SMEs when it comes to the Power Platform and is going to be guiding you through day 2. The expectation for today was that you have already created your app. So Glenn was here on the stage walking you through that. You got the guide yesterday to creating your app or your container for what you're going to be building today. And now it is going to be pretty fast paced. We've got a lot of content to get through today and then building on that content tomorrow. So if you do have multiple screens, I would encourage you to keep the recording up on one so you stay in the webinar and then potentially have a work screen that has both your guide and then following along with what Ashley is helping you with today, which is to build your adaptive card. So with that, I'm going to turn you over into the very capable hands of Ashley and we'll get started. So again, get your guide up and get the session up. If you have 2 screens, that would be really helpful to help you with this skills lab.
Thank you, Heather. So Samantha, I see a question. What should we actually have open? First and foremost, have open a browser that you can follow along with a couple of open tabs using Power Automate, given the tenant credentials that were shared with you yesterday. And if you do have another screen where you could have the document guide open there in a second window, that could be helpful. We're going to be walking through everything step by step. So if you don't have that, don't worry. Or if it's too confusing to follow back and forth between looking at that, follow along with me, and actually doing stuff, whatever you feel most comfortable with. But ideally, we're going to be doing things together. But if anything that you miss out on, you do have that guide to walk you back through and at least catch you back up ahead of tomorrow. So that said, let me share my screen here real quick because I would like to share a couple of things, a couple of adaptive card examples before we actually get started in building our card. Because what we're going to be doing today is pretty basic. Not that it's, overly simple or easy, but it is a simple or a smaller process. But I always like to show kind of the bigger examples of what you can really do and build into. So as you're going through this, you're like, well, we ended up having 2 or 3 fields, but like, what are the possibilities? So one example of an adaptive card is here. This is a contact update form where we are doing things like either adding new, updating existing, replacing existing, or removing addresses, phone numbers, or email addresses. So here, if I were to choose create new address, I'm going to bring up a different, what I'm going to say, form here, which is really a different adaptive card. well, if it manages to load from under pressure, there we go. So here we've got a field that will be relevant to adding a new address, like the type, country is defaulted in there, address lines, city, state, so forth. But say I wanted to remove an existing address, that form should probably look a little bit different. I don't want somebody to be typing in all of the same address fields that would be going into a new address. So here they can actually select that existing address data that is already on this constituent's record and say, this is the one I want to remove, leave some comments, submit it, and then I'll go through whatever the next steps are to actually make that happen. Another one I've been working on recently that is in the donor portal that I think is kind of cool because it's in the donor portal is a member portal way for member admins to be able to submit various changes. So they would go into this member portal tile here from their donor portal, and then they can do different things like removing graduates or chapter officer changes, which is then going to bring up a different page here. And both of these examples I'm showing you, though, this is one Power Automate flow, powering everything, and multiple different adaptive cards that are going through each different page. So here, if I were to say review without changing anything, this is then going to go into a different adaptive card. So it's all powered by adaptive cards and by Power Automate, but there's a lot of flexibility here in what you can eventually build out. Now, for what we are going to be building out today, though, we are going to do here we go, a request fundraiser assignment. So the use case here is that I am a fundraiser and I'm on a constituent's record and I want to be assigned as the fundraiser for that constituent. So we're going to build out an adaptive card that's going to allow someone to choose the fundraiser type, add in any additional comments, and then actually submit that onto somebody else to get approved and then have that assignment created onto this constituent. As you can see, a little bit more basic, but the ideas and options are really endless once you get into it. Okay, let me quit sharing this screen real quick. Okay. Okay, my quick screen share. There we go. Okay, so in order to start building out your adaptive card, we're going to use this tool set available from Microsoft. It's the Adaptive Card Designer. So in a new browser window, we need to go to adaptivecards.io/designer. If you just go directly to adaptivecards.io first, that's fine. Then just go ahead and switch over to Designer. Once you are here, you can see this initial page has a lot going on. We're going to select New Card, Blank Card, and then update the host app to Outlook Actionable Messages and target version to 1.4. The reason we change it to Outlook Actionable Messages and target version 1.4 is because the Blackbaud adaptive card host spa was designed using this host app with this target version. It is possible, and I will say there are things that do work in later versions or features that are available in different host apps. But the promise of what it will be truly functional and available is built off of this host app and this target version. So just to show you a quick example, if you look over here, my containers to the left, if I change it to target version 1.5, I have this additional option over here of table. I can actually say that table does work. It was in that donor portal example I was just showing you, but there are other features that we've seen that don't work in later target versions. So if when you're new, stick with Outlook actionable messages and target version 1.4. Those will work. And then as you get more comfortable with trying out maybe other things that may or may not be available, feel free to, choose some different options, understanding that there is always that underlying caveat. All right, so the first thing we want to do is choose our text block for what's going to be the header on the card. And also I should give a quick layout of this page. So over on the left, we have the card elements, which are going to be all the things that we can drag and drop onto the card. So you have like containers, column sets. Those are going to be things that kind of position and arrange things on your card a certain way. The different elements themselves, which are more like hard-coded on things that somebody can interact with. And then inputs are going to be the things that become more like the form fields where somebody can actually input data into that field. All of that, when we drag it on, goes into this middle window, gives us a preview. And the bottom right here, this sample data editor, you can just minimize that. We're not going to use sample data editor at all. That is an option if you are using templating adaptive cards, which for most use cases, it's not needed. If you are a third-party developer, there could be a use for templating cards there, but for most cases, just having the one card works for what we need. And this bottom card payload editor, we're going to see starts to get built into. So I'm going to remove that again and re-add the text block back into the top. And you can see the body down here starts to append itself into the card payload editor. This is going to be what we eventually move over into Power Automate to actually have Power Automate host and show this card. The card structure is just a little clickable element to where you can choose where you are on the card. And then the element properties are where we can set different values. So the first thing we want to do is say we want to change this from new text block to request fundraiser assignment. This is going to be our header of the card or the add-in that we see. We'll go ahead and make the weight bolder and the size medium. So it kind of gives it that header look and feel. Next, we will add our first input field. So we'll grab an input.text and drag it into the middle. And this is going to be our comments field. So you do want to make sure if you're looking at something in your card structure, the field you just added is highlighted. Then over here in the element properties, we can jump over and update the ID to ID comments. So we'll see this later on, but the ID field is what will define the fields that end up coming back into the flow. So if it's an input field, we need that ID defined. So then once we see data showing up in the flow, we know what field that data goes with. Otherwise, it's going to be a bunch of whatever.
Hey, Ashley, can I ask you a quick question? If we have some users that have an empty adaptive card and it says they can't change it, what should they do?
This might be a new one. Let me finish. Let's add the comment here and then jump over to that. I might have one of you hop on stage with us to show me what you're talking about.
Sure, sounds good.
Okay, so we're going to set our ID. Our label will be comments. Placeholder text can be removed, and we'll let multi-line be true because someone might have a lot of comments to share. Okay, so now let me jump back over here. And Heather, I don't know if you know off the top of your head how to let somebody on the stage. I know I can find that.
I think that they have to raise their hand to come up on stage, and then I can approve you. So, Mrs. Johnson, if you want to raise your hand, I can do that. A couple. All right, let's see. I think I see the rant. Okay, I'm going to approve you to come up. Okay, so you'll be on the stage when I approve you.
So, did they give you an option to share your screen anywhere?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. Can you explain what you're seeing? That's okay. Can you explain what you're seeing?
So when I first log on, it just had a picture of someone else. Like, okay, I'm just going to log on again. And so it said publish adaptive card schema, Matt Hiddinger, set due date view. Okay, so I X'd out of all of that and got rid of it. And then now it just has empty adaptive card, add an action, and it won't let me add a text block.
It sounds like you're in the right place. Let me reshare my screen here.
Yeah, everything I did, I'm in the right place. I'm seeing the same thing you are, except for the fact that it will not let me add a text block.
So, sorry, a lot of tabs open here. When you say it will not allow you to add a text block, all I'm doing here is picking this up, like clicking and holding it and dragging it. That's the input.txt. Same thing though. And dragging and dropping it onto the form.
Yep, and it's not letting me do it.
Does it give you an error?
Hang on a minute. I think I got rid of it. Okay, I've got it now.
Okay.
Wonderful.
I got it.
Perfect.
Wonderful.
I say if anyone else, is having issues like that, I would suggest maybe trying a different browser. Sometimes different browsers work a little bit differently with these kind of things, but at least in my experience and working through our app in a day sessions where this comes from, we haven't encountered anything that would truly be blocking you. So usually it would be something limited to one of those, like the switching browser, something like that. So it's play around with it a little bit. It should work. All right. If you need a couple more minutes to get your card up, I would say don't worry about following it. Don't get everything in here. Don't worry about getting everything in here perfectly. Maybe just add the header field up here. And then let's move on to adding the action. And you can always come back and add some more details to this card later. And that's actually one of our processes is coming back, adding stuff, re-updating it into our flow. So you'll get familiar with what that process looks like. So instead, we want to move on to adding our action. So here, this is going to be the action that is going to kind of be like the submit, something that's actually going to send this data to do something with. So we'll go ahead and click on add an action. If you don't see add an action, you're probably clicking directly on an element. Either click out onto the outside white space or in the card structure, just highlight adaptive card. And then click on add an action and choose action.execute. Once you have that selected, that one does not automatically highlight itself in the card structure. So we'll want to select that and then change the title from action.execute to submit. And we'll want to set associated inputs to automatic. And I think that is it. Yep. Okay, so we've technically created our first card. Now we just need to link it up or add it into a Power Automate flow so that we can start to surface this inside Razor's Edge or Financial Edge or somewhere else. So to do that, you're going to, I would say in a new browser tab, keep your old browser tab open because we're going to need to come back and copy what's down here in this card payload editor. So in a new browser tab, go to make.powerautomate.com. Once you are here, you should be signed in with your Microsoft tenant credentials that were supplied to you yesterday by Heather and Glenn. Now, over on the left, go ahead and choose templates. And then search for Blackbaud. And then we're going to choose create an adaptive card sky add-in, which is exactly what we're doing. Once this screen comes up, it is going to double check and prompt you to authenticate to the Blackbaud Sky add-in connector if you have not already. If you haven't, it should have an option there to just kind of do it within this window. If you have, you can go ahead and click on continue. And then it brings us to this screen. So first, I would say let's go ahead and rename it at the top to Flow 1. Create a fundraiser assignment request adaptive card. This is just going to help us later on to make sure these have clear names. And then go ahead and click on the manual step. And let's change from who can trigger the flow from any user in my tenant to anyone. Now, you don't need to worry about anybody actually triggering this flow. Only people who are validated to your NXT environment based off of the use of this validated user identity token are actually going to be able to trigger this flow. So the second thing we want to do here in order to update this action, we need to go to developer.blackbaud.com. And then once you are there, at the top, you will go to developer account, my applications, and then you want to click on the application that you created yesterday. From here, go ahead and copy the application ID at the top. Go back to your flow, and then we'll just paste in that application ID into this validated user identity token. That will then ensure that anyone who, if by chance get access to that URL that is being used to trigger this flow, that only valid Razor's Edge users or any Blackbaud solution that has this IP access for an adaptive card would be actually triggering this flow. All right, so then let's click on the compose adaptive card JSON. Go ahead and if you inside the inputs window, if you click on Control A, just backspace everything out of there, and then jump back over to the adaptive card window. And then here in the card payload editor, if you do Control A again to highlight everything, and then Control C to copy it, then we can go back to our flow and paste everything in here into the input. Once that is pasted, at the bottom, we need to change action.execute to action.webRequest. That is because action.execute is not a supported action type for the Blackbaud adaptive card host SPA, but action.webRequest is, and they do basically the same thing. If you're curious about, where the documentation that shows me that, back on the developer portal, you go to, from the documentation, go to add-ins, and then go to adaptive cards and actions. The list of actions here are the ones that are supported. So we see at the top that action.execute, action.submit, and action.http are not supported. All of these, though, the functionality that they would be doing is pretty much covered by what is available in action.webRequest. So it is just a slight variation in terms of using the adaptive card designer to build it out, what the available actions are here compared to the actions that we actually have available within the Blackbaud adaptive card host spot. So in order to accommodate that, though, we're just going to manually take out action.webRequest and put in action.execute. Reverse that. Take out action.execute and put in action.webRequest. All right. Once that is done, then we can go ahead and save this flow. And word to the wise, if you're new to Power Automate and something like this says it is saving, give it a moment to save. Once it's done saving, most of the time you have this green bar show up below like the title bar. If you don't have that show up, you at least, saving goes away and may say saved or may just go away. Either way, if it still says saving, do not want to navigate away from the page because it may not completely save and you will lose the work for what you were building in here. But assuming you do have that saved, now we can click on the manual action and go ahead and copy the HTTP URL here. Then in a new browser tab, we will go to https://blkb.co. Oops, I am all kinds of typos in there. .co/sky add-in URL. There we go. And that's going to take us to the Blackbaud Sky add-in URL builder. This URL builder is going to help us define just jumping back here, back to my application that I was on before I moved to the adaptive card documentation, the URL that is needed to add our add-in over here. So we can see in this example, you have this really long URL. If I were to jump back to the adaptive card documentation there, that would start to show you the building blocks of how you actually build that URL. But for the sake of ease, we have gone through and actually built out this form so that we don't have to worry about how to get all that parsed in and concatenated and correctly together. We used to try to do that during these classes, and it would just, everybody pretty much came up with a different URL than what you were supposed to. So to make it easier, this Microsoft form, which is powered at the end by a Power Automate flow, will be used to generate our URL. So for the Blackbaud solution for today, we're going to select Razor's Edge NXT. For the extension point, we are doing a constituent page action. And enter the name of the action to be viewed by end users. So this is the name of the add-in that will show up in that add-ins dropdown. So just to make sure that what I'm showing here today is very clear and we're not, highlighting something later that I've already built, we're going to do BB Dev Days 25 fundraiser assignment. Feel free to name yours however you choose. If you were in your live environment or even a test environment and you were adding an application like this, everybody would be able to see it as soon as you add this into that environment. So it is important that you have the name be something meaningful. But since you are today in the Sky Developer cohort environment, that environment has some special functionality to where only you see your add-ins and your applications. So feel free to name it whatever you want. You're going to be the only one that sees it. And when you go in there, you will only see yours. So the type of add-in for the action is going to be the adaptive card. We want the adaptive card to display as a flyout. As I do. If you want to do a modal, that's fine. And then enter the HTTP URL returned by the Power Automate flow. That's going to be that URL I just copied from the Power Automate side. And does the adaptive card contain templating? No. And enter your email address to receive the add-in URL. And then once you have all of that in, go ahead and click on Submit. Now, did I share? Just checking here to see if I share the entire screen. I think I did. Either way, you should, I'm going to open up my email, so we should see one come into me. If I did not share the entire screen and just shared the specific window here, then you're not going to get to see my add-in at the same time. But it looks like a lot of you are following along successfully, which is fantastic. Now I just need to figure out where mine is in this lovely list. There we go. So I get all of yours copied to me because anytime there's any weird issues, it's nice to have that to reference back because I am the owner of the flow that is powering that form. All right, so I've got my URL now, and I can come back over to my application. I'm going to add a new add-in, call this my BB Dev Days 25 fundraiser assignment, paste in my URL, and then for my extension point, choose development office, constituents, constituent page action, and save. So now if I jump back over to my RE environment, Heather, if you cannot see me sharing my Razor's Edge record here, please hop on the screen or hop on the stage and let me know, because I don't remember if I shared the entire screen or just that one window. But I'm going to assume I am sharing everything. So from here, I will go ahead and refresh my record. If you don't already have a record open, go ahead and get into the Sky Developer cohort environment. And I would say search for a record. I think I have a kind of a test record saved in the documentation. Yep, I do. So you're welcome to use that. Also, great idea to go ahead and create your own test record. So as you actually start adding data onto this, you're not adding the same data en masse here as everyone else is. I'll use that later on as well. Once you have a constituent record open, though, go ahead and click on add-ins. And then you should see yours over here in the list. If you have more than one, there could be more than one. And we should see our request fundraiser assignment show up in the window just like that. So if right now you'll notice if we click on submit, nothing's actually happening. It is just, nothing, it just looks like submit. So the next thing we're going to do is link in another flow to where once we click submit, something will actually happen here. I'm just going to hop off from sharing real quick and just see if there's any immediate questions or anything that we need to address.
I think I answered the majority of the questions. There's one that's like a little bit back off topic, so I think we can try to cover that at the end if we have time. But
okay.
See some questions that are coming in through the chat. So just a reminder, if you have questions, it would be really trying to pick them up and move them to Q&A, but it would be helpful if you use the Q&A tab. That way we can really triage those questions. I think I see one that maybe I didn't get to in that way. It looks like someone thumbs up it. Let me move it. How do I get access to the developer portal environment? I have the developer account.
If you have the developer account, you should have access to the developer portal environment. They are one and the same. So you would just go to developer.blackbaud.com. Once you are there, you're going to either have an option to sign in or sign up. So if you've already signed up, go to sign in, enter your credentials. If it says your credentials aren't valid or something's wrong there, then go to sign up. Maybe you signed in with a different email address than what you remember, and just re-sign up again. It is automatically approved, and there's really no harm in if you happen to have two, like one's false, one's real.
Okay. I know there's some folks concerned about falling behind, having to step away. So you do have the guide. I can't make promises right now about early access to recordings, but I will inquire with our BB Dev Days team if that's something that they could accelerate for this session so that you can go back and follow along. I think that the guide should be really helpful. It has visuals for every single one of the steps. So you should be able to follow along with that and get caught back up if that is you. So don't worry.
Yep, absolutely. I was like, yeah, that is step by step. I'm actually, if you see me looking over to my left whenever I'm talking, I'm looking at the same guide. So you're not going to be losing anything that I'm not, going through step by step with you. So you'll have time this afternoon or this evening or tomorrow, whenever, to hopefully catch back up before tomorrow's session.
Can you go back through like what the bit.ly link, right? Like the shortened link is taking to the Microsoft form. Can you share again, like what that URL is doing? Like what role does it play in the project? I think people are following along, trying to click the right things and maybe losing a little bit of like what that part is doing related to the add-in in the app.
Absolutely. Yes. Wanted to do that at the time, but also didn't want to jump back and forth too much and also make that confusing. So, okay. So I am back on developer.blackbaud.com. I am moving away from my application here, and I'm going back to add-ins and adaptive cards. If I were choosing any other type of add-in, just so you're aware, other than adaptive cards, I'd be getting to the same level of documentation here under this getting started. Just in case, wrong scroll bar. But today we're talking about adaptive cards, so staying focused here. As we go through this page, you'll see, to use the adaptive card host spa, register a Sky add-in, which is what we were doing, and provide the following base URL. So that is the first part of all of the adaptive card add-in. And then you have to supply the add-in type. So is it going to be a tile or is it going to be a button? So if it's going to be a tile, then we're going to add tile there. And then the card service URL. And that card service URL is the HTTP URL that we copied from the Power Automate flow. And if it's going to be a button, same idea. And then there are additional options depending on whether it's a tile or a card or a button that can be set as well, which would be optionally appended onto that URL. Most of the time, at least for what we're working through, these additional options don't matter too much. But for the button action, which is built into what is in the URL builder, whether it's a flyout or a modal, does matter. So that's the last thing that kind of gets appended onto the end of that URL. And you end up with this giant piece that looks like this. So highly recommend you getting comfortable and familiar with this documentation so that you are able to build these URLs out yourself and not have to use the URL builder. But at the same time, the URL builder is not going away. It supports right now Blackbaud Financial Edge, CRM, Altru, and I think grant making, or maybe education management, not yet grant making. One or the other that I have in there, one else that needs to be added. So feel free to use that as well. But if you are using that, it is always good to understand, like, if I use this easy tool to help me build it, what's actually happening. So in case that tool is not available or it breaks, you can have something else to go back to yourself. Okay. All right. So in terms of the lab guide, we're going to jump back in. I'm currently on step 33. So if you're following along, you should be right in the same spot. And again, if by chance, you've gotten a little bit out of step here, don't worry. The lab guide has it and you'll be able to get resynced up tomorrow. Following along and just seeing what's happening and kind of understanding it is just as important, if maybe sometimes not more important, than being able to follow along step by step. All right, so back onto make.powerautomate.com. I have closed my flow 1, which is also always a good practice to get into between editing and testing flows, because if you have multiple tabs open with the same flow, you can get into some weird caching issues where you think you've saved something or done something and then it's just stuck. So I always recommend to hit on that blue back button, come back to the main flow details page before testing it or doing anything further. Now though, we're going to go back to templates, search again for Blackbaud. And here we want to choose the trigger a flow from a Sky add-in adaptive card action. There's a very similarly named template in here, trigger a flow from a Sky add-in button that is used for different situations. Make sure you are choosing the one for the adaptive card action. Otherwise, there's just some small steps later on that might trip things up a little bit. They're very similar, so easy to get past if you do go that route, but easier also if you just choose this one. All right, first up, go ahead and update the name to Flow 2. Trigger a fundraiser assignment. From a Sky and a debit card action. It's a rather long name, so normally I'd probably shorten that a little bit, but it worked for us for today. Same steps as before, we're going to update manual to anyone. On the validate a user identity token, I need to grab my application ID again. All right, and then on the build response message, I like to take out, so we'll see this happen in a second. It's gonna be like the pop-up message that we see from inside the record inside Raiser's Edge. After we click on submit, this is just all put in here as a sample. For this stuff that we're building out today, you know, we could probably take out all of it in terms of relevancy, but it is nice to see something to know that you're the one that submitted it and it is looking at the right record that you submitted that action on. So what I suggest is taking out all of the last 3 rows, including the last comma on the 4th row. And then once you have all of that done, you can go and click on save. Again, we're going to wait for that to change from saving to saved. There we go. And then you can click back on the manual action and copy the HTTP URL from here. And then we're going to click on back. Got it. Thank you. And then we want to reopen Flow 1. And then click on the Compose Adaptive Card JSON action. Go to the bottom of this window. And after associated inputs auto, add a comma. Go to the next row and then type URL. And then add 2 double quotes. Move your cursor back over in between those double quotes and paste in the URL that we just copied. Now, once you have that, oh, I didn't like something I did there. Oh, instead of adding a comma after auto, I added a period. That happens a lot. All right, so now try again on save. Excellent. So now we'll go and click on back. Again, to just close this out so it's nice and safe. And then we can open up our record in Raiser's Edge again. Always a good idea to refresh first, just to make sure that you don't have anything cached, and so it's not reflecting the most recent update. Go back to add-ins, choose BB Dev Days, and we'll say for our comments, please approve, and click on submit. Excellent. So now we've got that positive toast message letting me know the user ID and username who triggered it, and the context record ID, which is 627224, which is the same record I'm on up here, 67224. So now all of that data is going to be coming back into my flow in order to do something else with. Okay. I'm going to do another quick pause here just to see if there's anything, if I can find our screen now. Everyone up to date, or does it seem like we're good to keep going? I'd like to keep going, but I also don't want people to be too lost.
I think we're okay. We can keep going. I think if before we end out today, Ashley, if we can just paint a picture of where we're going from here to like tee up tomorrow so we can see how we're going on this project. So just like take a few minutes to like put this in context, like where we're going tomorrow and maybe how to get there. Would be great.
Yes, absolutely. Given that, I will say I will stop at 5 minutes till, just to make sure we do have that time. If it's a weird stopping point, that it just might be, that's okay. I have a nice stopping point that I would love to get to, but I'm not worried about getting to it or not. So we'll get through it all by tomorrow, no matter where we stop. That's where we are now. I do see a couple comments here, that the add-in never showed. They are a little slow, so that is probably its biggest downfall. Sometimes that initial loading time is a little bit slow, so I would say just give it a minute, wait. If you have waited too many minutes, double check your URL. Often, like if your URL, if you see the add-in showing up, there could still be something wrong showing up in the URL itself. So maybe try regenerating that URL through the URL builder. And then whenever you make sure on your flows that you have both of the manual actions set to anyone. If you have it set to any user in my tenant, it will not show up for you. And then if you change it to anyone but do not regenerate the URL builder, that will also cause an issue. So if you have your set still to any user in my tenant, change it to anyone, regenerate the URL, and then update your add-in, and then it should show up. If not, we can troubleshoot that a little bit more. All right, so now what we are going to jump back over to is sharing my screen. Okay, so now we are going to continue to update the adaptive card a little bit. So we had our comment field in there. We have the submit button. And next we want to add in the type, so the fundraiser type field. So if you still have your request fundraiser assignment kind of sample adaptive card out here, in the adaptive card designer, just reopen this or go back to this tab. If you close this tab, just go back to adaptive card.designer, new card, go back to the same steps as before, and then you can just from your flow one, go in here and go down to the compose adaptive card JSON action here, copy out everything, and paste it back over. Either one works. If you do that option or anytime in the future, you will notice it gives this error that action.webRequest is an unknown action type, which we know because we already talked about that, but that's okay. It's not going to stop us from building out or adding anything else here. So now we want to add in our fundraiser type. So we are going to move an input.text in between the header for request fundraiser assignment and above comments. Our ID will be ID type. The label will also just be type. If you want to choose fundraiser type instead, that's fine. I'm going to take out the placeholder text. And I forgot to show you all this earlier, but for whatever reason in this designer, whenever you take out the placeholder text on that element properties window, it does not actually take out everything over here. So if you just manually go into that card payload editor and backspace out that piece, then that will get you what you need. And I do like to include a separator on this one because it just gives this little faint gray line, depending on like your brightness of your screen, you might see it more or less, to kind of separate the header out from the other fields. All right, so this next part is going to be slightly tricky in that we need to copy this and update it back with our URL and our data that's already in here. So if you, it might be a good idea to say regardless, if you have like another notepad document or something that you can quickly access, sticky notes, anything like that, it's fine. And just copy out this whole URL parameter. So depending on what step of where you were when you access that last tab, whether you started from the old tab or if you recopied from flow 1 and pasted it back in, you'll have that saved. Now we can all just take out what is there and wrong piece and paste in what I just copied from the adaptive card window. And so now, we just completely took that part out for me. Okay, if you did the same thing for you, back on the adaptive card window, let's change. I have to add in. It used to not do this. This is new. Used to keep the action.execute in there as it was, and it would just, at least would not take it out of the card payload editor. If it did do that for you though, you can just add that action back in, and then we can recopy it and paste everything back over here. There we go. So again, I'm going to change action.execute to action.webRequest. And then I will grab my URL back from my notepad document over here. So I've got that in, and just making sure that each of these individual rows are separated by commas. And that's really it for this point. So I've got my new type field in here, and I've got it updated with action.webRequest plus that URL. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and save just in case. And we're going to continue on for just a couple more steps. And then again, I will stop at the 5-minute mark. So now we need to start bringing in those fundraiser types. So I'm going to, before validate the user identity token below manual, I want to add an initialize variable step. And I'm going to say initialize variable fundraiser types. And this is going to be an, what did I have here? An array. That's right. And then after the validated user identity token, we are going to add the send an HTTP action from the Blackbaud Sky add-ins connector. So I'll go ahead and select that. I had mine saved as favorites because I do use it a lot, but just search for Blackbaud if you're on that screen and then locate the Sky add-ins connector. The method here is get. And then what I'm actually doing, so this is the API reference, and this will be where I'll close this out for today. Any endpoint that does not already have a corresponding action within one of our pre-built connectors can be called using the send an HTTP action, except for anything in payments. Payments is its own special thing, but CRM, Raiser's Edge, Financial Edge, grant making, education management, all of these, any endpoint that is not yet available in a connector can be called using this send an HTTP request action. And the way you do that is by referring to your API reference documentation. So you've got API reference. It's going to be different per solution. And then depending on the like functional area or category, you're going to, navigate into that appropriate area. As to knowing what's here, what's not, that's just a matter of, getting comfortable with it and looking through this documentation a lot to know what is here. But for today, we want to choose fundraising type. So this is going to be the get fundraiser type. And what you paste into the send an HTTP action is everything after .com, including that first /. There is a little like help tip here on that relative path field. It kind of shows you like everything after .com, and it does show in the example too to include that /. So you want to make sure you have that in. The method here, it is get, which matches our method over here. So it is important to double check that as well. And let's say it's an HTTP request to get fundraiser types. And then go ahead and save your flow. And we will start back from step 52 tomorrow. But to just add a little bit more background to that, an HTTP action, this is one, the fundraiser types is an easy one to kind of show and demo because you don't have to pass in any other parameters. But if you were using like this get package, it has this other package ID listed out on the end here. So if I were calling this endpoint, I would have to be supplying as part of what I'm putting in, like, copying that section there. I would have something like that, and then / and a value appended on the end to show that that package ID is. So you will start to get comfortable with whatever the documentation is here, but just be aware that when you have these additional parameters showing in the parameter section or kind of in the curly brackets within the request, it does require someone else to go into those fields for this in an HTTP action to work. All right, so where we are going to end this tomorrow, we are going to have this get fully automated out to where this will send out an email with approval options of either approve or reject. And if approved, that fundraiser assignment is going to automatically get into Raiser's Edge for the person who submitted it, for the person or the constituent they requested to be assigned to. If it was rejected, we will send an email notifying the user so that they can know that their fundraiser request was not approved. All right, a couple minutes left here for questions. Yes, Bianca, you saw it. It is good. Anything else that we need to attend to?
Yes, a few things, just a few housekeeping things. So I know you said it, but I want to impress upon it. The expectation is we're starting from which step tomorrow?
Step 52.
Step 52. So if you're not at step 52 and you are not able to get to step 52 because you don't have access to the Sky developer cohort environment for whatever reason, our good friend Gabby is standing by. I let her know there's some expectations to get some requests to the BB Dev Days inbox. So please email bbdevdays@blackbaud.com, say you need access to the environment, and we'll get it done as quickly as possible so that you can get caught up. I did make the ask if we can expedite the recordings. I do not have an answer back on that quite yet. But I will see if there's any availability to be able to help you out there. But you do have the guides. We'll make sure everyone gets access, and we will get started tomorrow. We'll do a quick recap and then get back into the guide. So
say to Kelly, to your question, is there a way to test to make sure we got it right up to 52? The last few actions, there's not an easy way to test. If you can make sure you got up to test or to step 44, that is going to be going into that Raiser's Edge action, going to the add-ins and clicking submit. If you're getting that blue pop-up toast, you at least made it that far. Everything else, it's not really an easy intermediary way to test.
Yeah. We're going to get this one up as fast as possible. It may not be until tomorrow, but we're going to get it up just as quickly as we can. So thank you so much, everybody, as we round out day 2 here on BB Dev Days, and we will see you back tomorrow, part 3. Thanks so much.
Thank you all.